Hi, it's Karen here, and I'm delighted this week to be able to bring you this cute little card just in time for Christmas. Perhaps it's for a little one. You could even make them for gifts for the whole class if that was your bent. And I know it's a bit early to be thinking about Christmas, but hey, it'll come round soon enough. So here we're using a gel plate background and I put brushos on it, and I've got a little tag in here which has got some reindeer food and a little tag which says every dream begins with a wish. So that's using the stamp Every Dream. This one I have just printed on my computer. Here I'm using reindeer, the small reindeer, and here I'm using fir branch, and I've just splattered the pocket. So I hope you'll join me as we do this together. For those who aren't into pinks and cutesy purples, I've created a variation on it using the Dreamscape papers by Tracy. There are 30 double-sided sheets there, and I've used the background. For this one, I've created a pocket in the same way, and I'm using pippin and again fir branch. And the tags that I'm using here, I'm using the Sweets Poppies set of 7 tags. I just cut them down to fit. So we'll get started. So here we have my 6x6 inch gel plate. We're going to do 2 pulls so that we can create one background and one for the pocket. I'm going to put picked raspberry distress oxide for the background on the gel plate. I've got my brushos in front of me. The coloured brushos that I'm using are yellow and orange and alizarin crimson, purple and white. I'm using my 6-inch speedball brayer because I think that works really nicely. It's soft for the gel plate. So I'm just going to ink up my gel plate. I'm inking up my brayer really well. And I'm doing it, I'm not rubbing the brayer back and forth. I'm picking it up and flicking it over. And I'm going to make sure that my gel plate is well covered. I'm going to go both sides to make sure that I've got a nice even coverage of the oxides. Just rubbing off my brayer there. And here we go. So I'm moving everything out of the way because these gorgeous little brushos, they just splatter everywhere, don't they? So I'm going to start with my yellow. These brushos I have just watered down. And I'm just going to put, I just let the first big blob of brusho onto my kitchen towel, which is next to where I'm working. And I'm going to be fairly generous because that's what's going to give us that dreamy, blurry background that we're after. So I've now put my yellow in the centre of my gel plate. The reason I'm using a 6x6 is I'm going to pull 2 prints, and so that I can got one for the pocket and one for the background of the card. So here I'm going in with my orange brushos, and you can see I'm not too worried if I've got bigger splats. I hope you can see that on the camera. Bigger splats and smaller splatters. I'm washing my brush off between my colours. So yellow and orange in the centre. I'm now going in with alizarin crimson. This is a beautiful, beautiful colour. And again, I'm not really worried if I get some splatters. Some big splatters. I'm generously splattering all around the edge of the gel plate. And now I'm going in with my purple. And I'm keeping the purple to the edge. So what I've got here, yellow and orange in the centre, pink and purple on the edge. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a bit of white here and there, just over the whole plate. You can see there's ever such a tiny bit. That's going to create that sort of orby look if there is such a word as that. Now I'm going to get my piece of card and I'm going to pull my print. So you can see it's a very generous spread of the brushos. Wiping my hand very evenly over the plate. And then you've got that lovely, lovely mushed look. Now that needs to dry. I'm going to take a second pull. And this we won't be able to use for this project, but that's quite fun too. We're going to do a second pull the same way, exactly the same way. As I said, that's going to give us the pocket and one for the background. So I've cleaned up my gel plate, I've cleaned up my brushos, and we're on to the next step. So as I said, you want to pull 2 or 3 prints so that we can create something yummy for the pocket and something great for the background. So I've just cut out the best bits of each of my prints. I'm using an A6 card and I've given it a 2mm border all the way round, and I've cut one of my sheets to fit. So that's the background. Then I've cut a piece of white card, half the height and 5mm each side. So that's what my pocket is going to look like. And then I cut another piece of one of my prints with, again, about a 2mm border all the way round. So I've cut those. I've also cut 2 tags. I've cut a big tag. That's going to be our reindeer food, which, by the way, I don't think I told you, is oats, just rolled oats. But hey, the special little person you're giving them to, they won't know. It's reindeer food, right? And then I cut another smaller tag for the words. And then I've cut a small piece that every dream begins with a wish, the words we're going to stamp on there. So those are the pieces. I also printed from my computer, reindeer food. I changed the font this time because I think it matches the sentiment stamp much better. And then I just backed that again, about a 2mm border all the way around, using one of my pieces of print. So for the reindeer food, I just got one of these acetate bags. You know, we get them with all our Lavinia stamps, really. If you can't, then any kind of packet will do. And I just put a tiny bit of oats into that. I took one of my tags. And I'm just going to gently stick my label across the top of it. I'm using double-sided tape here. I'm doing what I always tell my students not to do. Don't do it in mid-air. The tape comes off much better if you lay it flat. So I'm just going to lay this across. So there's our reindeer food. And now we're going to stamp Every Dream Begins with a Wish. Now the stamp comes like this, so it's all in a line. And if you aren't sure how to do it, I'm going to show you how we mask off various pieces of the word stamp. I'm using here VersaFine Clair Nocturne, and I'm just going to ink up the first bit of the stamp. And I'm going to use some low-tack tape to just mask off everything except the piece that I want to stamp. So Every Dream. Take off my tape. I now just want the word begins. So again, I'm going to put a piece of tape either side of that word. Positioning it in the middle. Every dream begins with a wish. And I'm going to just make sure that I mask off all the other pieces of that stamp. Beautiful. There we go. So now I'm going to stick it onto my tag. And the next piece is the pocket. So the stamping of the small reindeer and the fir branch. So I'm taking the piece of paper that I've cut to just a bit smaller than my pocket. And I'm actually going to use my stamping platform today. And call me nervous, but yes, I'm nervous. I love this piece of paper that I've created. I love this purple on the side, and I don't want to mess it up. So I am going to use my stamping platform. Secure it in place with my magnets, and I'm going to use Nocturne, VersaFine Clair, Nocturne, and I'm just going to ink up the small reindeer stamp. So you can see when I'm inking, I do this gentle tapping motion. I never scrape it. That gives us a good solid. Just let the ink rest on the card for a moment. And we should get a nice crisp image. And we've got a beautiful, crisp, clean image. So the next thing we're going to do is fir branch, and I'm just going to heat set the small reindeer first because I don't want it to smudge at all. I'm going to do that off camera because it's loud and noisy, and I'll be back in a second. So here I am back again. I have heat set the reindeer, and now we're going to get ready to emboss the fir branch. I'm just using my anti-static pad over my image because I don't want any of the embossing powder to stick. And I'm going to, using Versamark clear embossing ink, I'm going to ink up the fir branch. The reason I wanted to put my reindeer in first is because now I know where to position the fir branch, because he's sort of looking up at the branch, and I'm going to put one either side of it. And I'm going to use Wow embossing powder, the white, superfine white, for the embossing. Again, I'm going to do this off camera because it's loud and noisy. And there he is, embossed. I'm just pouring my embossing powder back into the pot. And I just wanted to mention that when I do heat emboss, I start off by heating the back, because the superfine embossing powder is so fine it can blow all over the place. So by starting it onto the back, it secures it in place and it's less likely to fly everywhere. So we're in the last stages here. I just want to put a couple of extra images of the fir branch behind the white embossing, and to that I'm going to use VersaFine Clear, the Purple Delight, and I'm just going to ink it up a couple of times, stamp off, and then with the same orientation as I stamped, there we go. So it just created a tiny bit extra depth there. Now I'm going to splatter it with white paint. I use a fan brush, and I've got a tiny bit of white paint here that I'm just going to splatter onto my mat, and I'm going to water it down so that it does create the splatters, but not too runny, because if you do it too runny, then you get very watery splatters. And I'm just going to splatter around my reindeer. There we go. So I'm just going to clean up my mess, and then we are going to put it all together. So here we are, we're ready to put this all together. We've got now our A6 card with a piece that we've glued to the background. We've got our piece of white card that we have now created the front pocket, and we're going to stick the front pocket as soon as the white splatters have dried. For this I'm going to use Cosmic Shimmer glue. I love Cosmic Shimmer. It dries really quickly, but it gives you a few minutes, and it dries clear. That's the most important thing. And it does give you a few minutes to position it exactly where you need it to be. So there we go, that's our front pocket. We've got our one tag with our Every Dream Begins with a Wish. I just added a little charm that I tied it with some cord. And of course we've got our reindeer food. We're just going to attach our pocket now. I used double-sided tape. And the reason I did that instead of glue was because at least with the tape, I know where it's going to stick. Whereas with the glue, it tends to squidge a bit. Whereas the tape will stay where we need it to stay. And that way we get the space to be able to tuck into the card. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed that. I would love to see what you create. Do tag me. Any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I'd be delighted to help. And I'll see you again soon. Bye. Thanks for watching.